Howard Dwayne.
Who's that?
Calling the June 27th school board meeting to order. Stand for the pledge of, roll call.
Mr. Brubaker?
Here.
Ms. Karstafen?
Here.
Mr. Bax?
Here.
Mr. Elick?
Here.
And Mr. Gebhardt?
Here.
Steve, please stand for a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Some quick introductions. To my far right is board member Jim Bax. Directly to his left is board member Greg Elick. I'm Kevin Brubaker. To my right is Vice President Annie Karstafen, Senior Board Member Mike Gebhardt, and our Superintendent Dr. Jama, and our Treasurer Joy Clickinger. We have no board recognition, no presentation. We had nobody signed up for visitors' comments. So next item on the agenda is board member discussion items, and I would like to start the discussion in regards to this fall. You know, we have a 4.95 levy that should go on the ballot. Tonight we have a resolution here, but I'd like to open up discussion on what the board would like to see in regards to the levy. We have an opportunity to put a straight renewal on the ballot, which would keep it, the millage as where it is. We have an opportunity to put a replacement on there, which would increase dollars to our residents. And then we have the option of putting a 10-year on. What was the other one? A continuing. So, and I know when we had discussions in the past, we had a specific idea on the direction that the board wanted to go, but I just wanted to open it up for discussion from the board members on what your thoughts are in regards to the potential levy.
Go ahead. I don't know if there, at this time, if we want to make any changes to this. I'm thinking with everything that's going on with the master plan and within the community, that we'd want to do anything different than a renewal would be my thoughts. I think something that's unique about the city of Elyria is that they do like to have a say in how their money is being spent, even if it's every 5 years. I think that means a lot to the community. So I would think that, in my opinion, leaving it as a renewal after 5 years would stay the same pretty much.
And the renewal, as far as projections outward, they were based on renewal? Yeah. So for that reason, I would leave it just the way it is.
So we would have, what, a slight, based on the reevaluations by the auditor, there would be a slight dip in those numbers. Have we projected those out yet, or?
The 4.95 is currently being collected at 4.2.
Okay.
And so the renewal keeps the reduced millage and just keeps it going. So the dollar amount that we actually collect remains the same.
Okay.
Now, if it were based on, if we did a replacement, it goes back up to 4.95. It goes on the current values, and then there would be an increase in our revenues, and of course that means an increase in what our taxpayers pay.
I could say this, Mr. President, just being out in the community, doing the coffees on I'm doing 2 or 3 a week right now, actually, at different restaurants. It's become a routine, and I'm enjoying it extremely well. But this has been a topic since Ms. Higgins put out the Pioneer Press, and I'm hearing from the community to keep it at where it's at and do a 5-year. And that's going to be my recommendation as a superintendent as well.
Okay. Ms. Karstafen?
I have a question. You said in order to take it back to the 4.95, that would be a replacement, but the replacement would then be passed on to the residents, the homeowners.
Right.
Okay, so, but keeping it at the 4.2 that we're collecting now, that would be going with what we have currently.
Right.
I think that would be the fair and best way to go.
Okay, so it still says it's a renewal of the 4.9. 4.95 that we currently have. And it's a renewal as it is right now, so it's collecting at 4.2 for res and ag.
Got you. And then for commercial and industrial, you said that
They're
it's
still at 4.95.
4.95. Yes, I understand.
So a renewal would technically be no new taxes, but a replacement, even though very little, would be some new taxes.
It's still a 4.95 mil assessment. But because of values increasing,
Well, I'm talking about from a voter perspective.
from a voter perspective,
They may end up paying, even if it's $1 or $2 more, it could be a new tax.
You're absolutely correct.
You wouldn't be able to use the term renewal.
That's
Right.
a replacement.
And
You wouldn't be able to
use
use
the term
the.
no new taxes?
No new taxes.
Because the replacement then has to make the 4.95 whole, correct? You're gonna collect, you have to be whole at that point. But the 4.2, that's the continuance and is collecting at the dollar amount that we're at now. And how many years have we been collecting the 4.2? Just this year? Or for the last 5 years?
Since 1999,
Oh, well, didn't you?
we've been collecting a 4.95 mil levy.
Oh, okay.
Then, and as values go up, then the millage comes down.
Exactly.
To
So
hold the
we've
dollar volume,
renewed
to
it
hold the
each
dollar volume
time.
current. It's equal.
Right.
Yeah.
So you say 4.2, and I want to make sure it's clear that it is a 4.95 levy. It's only being collected at 4.2.
At 4.2.
But on the ballot and any verbiage, it's a 4.95
I understand.
levy.
Mr. Gebhardt?
And it'll say no new money, right?
No new taxes.
Right.
Okay. The city and the JVS are both putting one up too? Or have something going on the
It's my
ballot?
understanding that the college, the JVS, the city, and something with the county, one of the boards. So,
On the city side, city council has not made a determination. I would assume that there will be a renewal of that 30-year temporary. That will be on the ballot in the fall as well. And I concur with the rest of the board in regards to leaving it as a renewal and talking to you and talking to other folks to add an increase, particularly after we just passed a new school levy and in, what, 3-4 years, we have another big one coming up. I think keeping it the same makes sense.
What actually happens, the order of it will be in 2023, this will come up again for renewal. And in 2024, our 10-year emergency 15.9 mil one comes up for renewal.
Okay.
Just
So that'll be back to back.
Wow.
so you know.
Any other discussion?
Is this operating? Okay.
I wish you guys the best of luck in 23 and 24.
Well, with that being said, then, I will read a resolution. Resolution declaring it necessary to renew an existing 4.95 mil tax levy for the purpose of current expenses and requesting Lorraine County Auditor to certify the total current tax valuations of the school district and the dollar amount of revenue that would be generated by that renewal levy pursuant to sections 5705.03 and 5705.21 of the revised code. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Gebhardt, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Elick. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Treasurer, you call the roll.
Mr. Gebhardt?
Aye.
Mr. Elick?
Aye.
Mr. Bax?
Yes.
Ms. Karstafen?
Aye.
And Mr. Brubaker?
Aye, motion carried. Any other board member discussion items?
Oh, I had one item. With all the progress going on at the stadium, which is just absolutely wonderful, Dr. Jama told me they were laying the turf yesterday, or Tuesday. So I had to go down there and take a bunch of pictures, and it was really, really exciting. And with that said, I don't know about any of the board members or Dr. Jama, but I'm getting inundated with questions about bricks, pavers, momentums from the old stadium. And I do remember, I think it was either Rigda or Dave Stahl or somebody said that when they go in to tear down, they just go in and they don't worry about the bricks or anything.
what we have done, just so you are aware, Mr. Elick, each building that has come down, whether it was Hamilton, whether it was Spring Valley, and also with the large stadium, they do put a large pile of
Oh,
bricks
good.
out available for people to come and take a brick if they so choose.
How about a portion of the bleachers? Are they just going to remove those, or will there be sections of those made
From
available?
what I understand in the contract, they will be removing the bleachers.
Okay, so there is the potential that
Bricks.
for a lot of people, I actually had somebody a while back that played football with Vic Janowitz actually
Wow.
ask about the bricks in that from the old stadium.
Yeah,
So
we'll
I
make
thought
sure,
that was
we'll
really
make sure
neat.
there's a pile of bricks for people to get.
So, good, okay.
And in fact, even at Spring Valley, there were quite a few, in fact, they had a nice pile out there, they were
It
gone.
was on.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was out there today, I couldn't believe the bleachers are up. It's amazing the progress. And then the old stadium, it's just the stadium left.
Absolutely.
It's amazing.
I was talking to Mr. Ellick earlier today on the phone, and we're both talking. We both said the thing we want to do that first night is, and it's going to be, because I remember the faces of the high school. I can't wait for people to walk in and just be able to see their faces.
That wow factor.
That
where
wow
the-
factor of, wow, look what we did as a community. And what an exciting time it is for this city. And to know that once that opens up, we have 5 new schools that'll be opening up. And what an exciting time to be in Elyria.
Well, my visit yesterday wasn't as exciting as that. I got to see them put in water lines. So. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll move on to the meeting minutes. I need a motion and a second to approve the Board of Education record of proceedings for the June 13, 2018 as enclosure F1. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Moved by Mr. Bax. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Karstoffen. Any discussion? Madam Treasurer?
Mr. Bax?
Yes.
Ms. Karstafen?
Yes.
Mr. Elick?
Aye.
Mr. Gebhardt?
Aye.
And Mr. Brubaker?
Aye, motion carried. Madam Treasurer, action items?
Thank you, Mr. President. Tonight I have the monthly financial report to accept the financial report for the month of May 2018, which includes all bank reconciliations, investment report, cash balance report, and appropriation and expense reports as detailed in enclosure G1. Purchase orders, to approve the attached purchase order in order to comply with the district's purchasing procedures as detailed in G2. Number 3, COBRA rates, to approve the COBRA rates effective July 1st, 2018, as seen in your agenda. And that is it in this portion.
Thank you, Madam Treasurer. Do I have a motion to approve the items recommended by the Treasurer?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Karstoffen. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Gebhardt. Any discussion?
I have a question, just a question. On the COBRA rates, is that a increase from last year, or did it basically stay the same, or?
This is an increase from last year, and that's just on the COBRA because our COBRA rates were less than they should have been last year. So this bumps them up to where they should be. As far as our employee cost, that stayed the same. There was no increase.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, Madam Treasurer?
Ms. Karstafen?
Aye.
Mr. Gebhardt?
Aye.
Mr. Bax?
Yes.
Mr. Elick?
Aye.
And Mr. Brubaker?
Aye, motion carried. Treasurer, other?
My other items, this starts in with all of the end of the year closing items. Number 1, advance and transfers, to authorize the treasurer to advance and transfer funds from the general fund to the following programs to close fiscal year 2018 as detailed in enclosure H1. Number 2, permanent appropriations, to approve modifications to fiscal year 2018 permanent appropriations as detailed in enclosure H2. Amended certificate of estimated resources, to approve the amended certificate of estimated resources for fiscal year 2018 as detailed in enclosure H3. Number 4, temporary appropriations, to approve temporary appropriations for fiscal year 2019 as detailed in enclosure H4. Number 5, the amended certificate for fiscal year 2019, to approve the amended certificate of estimated resources for fiscal year 2019 as detailed in enclosure H5. And those are my recommendations for this evening.
Thank you, Madam Treasurer. Do I have a motion to approve as recommended by the Treasurer?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Gephardt. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Bax. Discussion.
I would like to walk you through this if that's all right.
Absolutely.
Instead of waiting for questions. You have your attachments with you, and if we start with the transfers and advances, that's attachment H1. A couple things I want you to know about this is advances are from the general fund to funds that are reimbursement funds. We spend the money and then we get the reimbursement from the state. So those are just temporary movements of money, and later in next fiscal year, I'll come back to you and ask to put the money back in general fund. The transfer does not go back to the general fund, and these transfers that are listed were, however, in the 5-year forecast. So those are not a surprise, but I just wanted to make sure you knew the difference between advance and transfer.
Joy, what would be included in termination benefits?
Those are all
As an
the
example.
severance pays.
Severance packages for our employees when they leave, retire.
And we move the money from general fund into that fund just to kind of set it
I
aside.
see, okay.
So that one, there will always be a transfer to termination benefits to 035. The $67,000 one, that's typically our paper purchases, and we're going to move those into general fund starting next year. So that transfer ought to go away. Now, that's not, it doesn't mean the expense is going away. We're just moving the expense to general fund where I believe it belongs anyway. Okay, on Exhibit H2, the appropriations that we have need to fall under the estimated resources, but they need to also cover the expenditures and the outstanding purchase orders. So from the last approval to the current estimates, you can see that the major changes are in bond retirement and, well, it's actually in capital projects. I've got my numbers on here. Here we go. Otherwise, we're pretty much on target with the appropriations that we had in place.
What would have affected that capital project fund? And was there something
Schools coming,
just,
New schools quicker than what we thought.
yes.
And we had it at the, there was also some expenditures where we had to move money around when we took the money out of capital, or out of 04 and moved it into 010. Both of those are capital project funds. But when the bond money initially came in, it went into 04. And then once we had the agreement with the state, with OFCC, then we had to move that money, parts of that money, into 010. Okay, on H3, Exhibit H3, this is a certificate of estimated resources. Again, you'll see the major changes from the last estimates are in the debt service and capital project funds. In this case, it was the same. You can see in the capital projects that we had 174,000. That's because the 78 was in the beginning balance, and we had also estimated that as a revenue source when it wasn't, so we just backed that down. So anyhow, those are the changes for the certificate of estimated resources. And then in 4 is the recap of the temporary appropriation resolution, which just is, this is for fiscal year, the next fiscal year. So to start spending as of July 1st, we have to have temporary appropriations in place. This is not a setting of a budget. This is merely 30% of what was spent in the current year just to get us started. And in September, you will get the permanent appropriations and the new budgets. So at this point, you're not setting any kind of budgets. You're making year-end adjustments to the budgets that were set in September of 17, and then we also adjusted them in January of 18. And this cleans them up for the end of the year.
Any other discussions or questions for the treasurer? Seeing as none, we have a motion and a second. Madam Treasurer, we call the roll.
Mr. Gebhardt?
Aye.
Mr. Bax?
Yes.
Ms. Karstafen?
Aye.
Mr. Elick?
No.
And Mr. Brubaker?
Aye, motion carried. Treasurer report,
I do not have anything this evening.
OFCC, OSFC.
Tonight, the action item that I would like the board to do is to authorize me to approve changes and enhancements to the athletic complex project not to exceed the current total athletic complex project funds available of $14.3 million plus interest earned in order to allow for timely completion.
Need a motion to approve the athletic sports complex items as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Elick. A second?
Second.
Ms. Gebhardt, any discussion?
Yeah, can you kind of expound on that a little bit for me with an explanation?
Yeah, we had, the money we raised through the bond issue. We've got the dollars that were transferred into the athletic complex, and we've got interest that's earned. We had a guaranteed maximum price for the stadium, and we also had the opportunity, which was under that 14.3, and we had the opportunity at this point to use some of the funds that are left to do the tennis courts is the big one, and just little odds and ends that change. We've got
Some of the rolling of the parking lot we had to do as an extra due to the wetness of the facility, things of that nature.
But just so we don't have to, keep coming back and changing things, there are changes or enhancements to that guaranteed maximum price, as long as it's still under the 14.3 plus interest that we have set aside for the stadium.
And I think they're projecting to have it complete too, under that 14.3,
Yes.
plus the interest number too, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's really good.
Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, Madam Treasurer?
Mr. Elick?
Aye.
Mr. Gebhardt?
Aye.
Mr. Bax?
Yes.
Ms. Karstafen?
Aye.
And Mr. Brubaker?
Aye, motion carried. Dr. Jama, Superintendent Action Items.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, I would like to make the following recommendations under superintendent action items for the board's consideration this evening. Item number 1, to approve the purchase order of Renaissance Learning Star Enterprise, a student growth measurement benchmarking system. This is not to exceed $50,000. The purchase order will be supported by the general fund to help our students with STAR and reading. It's an excellent program, and we're seeing a great deal of progress with our students as they take the STAR test. Item number 2, to approve the payments of stipends as listed below. Again, this is for professional development that takes place throughout the summer and in the beginning of the school year with our staff members. $100 per day, not to exceed 1 day, to the following teachers for their participation in the building leadership team, professional development planning. This stipend will be supported by Title I and Title IIA grant funds. $28.86 per hour, up to 15 hours, to the following teachers for doing summer boot camp. This stipend will be supported by the general fund. $28.86 per hour for 2.5 hours to the following Franklin teacher for a set-aside per school improvement grant. This stipend will be supported by the school improvement grant itself. $100 per day, not to exceed 1 day, to the following Crestwood teachers for their participation in the building leadership team, professional development planning. This stipend is supported by Title I and Title IIA grant funds. Item number 3, to approve the overnight athletic field trip for the Elyria High School cheerleading team to Denison University in Granville, Ohio, from Monday the 16th of July through the 18th of July 2018, as detailed in enclosure K3. And with that, Mr. President, that concludes my recommendations.
Thank you, Dr. Jama. Do I have a motion to approve the items recommended by the superintendent as presented?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Karstoffen. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Elick. Discussion. Seeing as none, Madam Treasurer?
Ms. Karstoffen?
Aye.
Mr. Elick?
Aye.
Mr. Bax?
Yes.
Mr. Gebhardt?
Aye.
And Mr. Brubaker?
Aye, motion carried. Superintendent Other?
Thank you, Mr. President. I do not have any items under other, but I do have several items under personnel action as recommended by the superintendent that I would like to present to the board this evening. Item number 1, to approve the retirement of certified staff as detailed below. Mary E. Uhas, who will be retiring from being an intervention specialist at Westwood. Again, giving her the best of wishes as she starts a new chapter in her life. Resignation of certified administrative staff. To approve the resignation of certified administrative staff members as detailed below. Linda Simon. Linda did a temporary assignment for us this school year at Franklin. Did a wonderful job, and I'll tell you what, she really helped out in a very difficult time with the passing of Lisa. We were lucky to have her for this year, and I just want to thank her for her commitment to the kids at Franklin School. Elsa Paisani, assistant principal at Elyria High School, will be resigning her administrative role and will be going back into the teaching ranks as she will be coming up in the board agenda. The next one I'm very, very proud to announce, to approve the appointment of the following certified administrator as detailed below. Ms. Julie Oka as the new associate principal of the Elyria High School. Item number 4, to approve the appointment of the following certified staff members as detailed below. Katrina Baginski, kindergarten teacher at Franklin. Adam Beharent, orchestra teacher, Elyria High School. Rose Hess, school nurse, Crestwood, Oakwood, and Westwood. Michaela Lawson, kindergarten teacher, Franklin Elementary. Elsa Paisani, grade 2 teacher at Oakwood Elementary School. And Erin Steitler, vocal music teacher at Elyria High School. Appointment of classified staff. To approve the appointment of the following classified staff members as detailed below, and there are a list from food truck drivers to new utility at Ely, with Brandon Bowles all the way through to substitute and building operations. Item number 6, supplemental contracts. To approve the supplemental contract of the following certified staff member as detailed below. James Black as the Techie Club Advisor at Northwood. Item number 7, to approve the athletic supplemental contracts following certified staff, classified staff, and non-employees as detailed below. Just so the board knows, I know at the last meeting we passed a resolution that changes some of the pay scales for our supplemental contracts. None of these here this evening contain the new salaries that will take place. Those have to be voted on by the EEA and ratified by the association. We'll be bringing this back to you in the, Jamie, is it in August? We'll be bringing it back to you in August to give you the new updates. And with that, Mr. President, that concludes my recommendations.
Thank you, Dr. Jama. Do I have a motion to approve the items recommended as the superintendent?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Elick.
Second.
Second by Mr. Bax. Any discussion?
Yeah, I have a question, just a question. Once our coaches have been accepted, say for the previous year, are they being vetted again before we accept them?
They have
the
to
next
have
year?
the proper credentials in place, absolutely, to participate. Now, as far as, it's every 3 years to get their pupil performance validation.
Thank you.
Is there a concern that I?
Yeah, that's.
I will look into that.
I also have a question. We're moving a assistant principal to a second grade.
Yes.
Has there been a salary change, or are we at the same salary that she had last year?
No, it is a salary change. It is significantly lower.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Madam Treasurer?
Mr. Elick?
Aye.
Mr. Bax?
Yes.
Ms. Karstoffen?
Abstain.
Mr. Gebhardt?
Aye.
And Mr. Brubaker?
Aye, motion carried. Dr. Jama, Jamie, I believe we have some of our employees and promotions here, so if you would.
This is Jamie's first night doing this, and I'm excited.
Oh, you got big shoes to fill there with Mr. Taylor.
God, yeah, it was about a size 12.
Staff members, Oka. She is being promoted to associate high school principal from assistant principal at Elyria High School.
All right.
Katrina Budzinski. She is going to be our kindergarten teacher at Franklin Elementary. Rose Huss. She is going to be our school nurse at Crestwood, Oakwood, and Westwood.
Wow.
And Jim Osborne, he is our new tech support technician.
Thank you, Jamie. Congratulations to everybody. Welcome the board to those new ones. So Waka, I know we're looking forward to having you in your role at the high school, so congratulations to you as well. Anything else, Dr. Jama?
I don't have any other recommendations to the board, but at this time, under superintendent report, I would like to call up Amy Higgins and discuss with the board our new agreement with Sponsor Burst, the company that is going to be out soliciting naming rights and sales and opportunities for us to get sponsorship for our new stadium. And as a board, we just wanted to share some items with you tonight to make sure we are all on the same page and what's going to be taking place at the stadium, what the board feels should be named appropriately. Is there certain areas that we don't want to have a specific name? Just to get a general idea as we move forward, what to do.
Sure.
Higgins?
Thank you. So I met with Sponsor Burst yesterday, and I'm happy to say they're out working hard.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Amy, is the cordless mic on maybe? Is that why?
No,
It must be this one.
turn it off.
Yeah, wiggle the wire.
Like the old TVs.
We'll try again. All right.
Used to fix the TV.
So back to what I was saying. They're out working hard. They are having a lot of success, a lot of interest in our project.
Wow.
From what they've told me, they've got accounts all over the place, but they're seeing way more interest in Elyria than they're seeing in other districts. So that's really encouraging.
And we all understand that. I mean,
Of course.
That's just a
It's
given.
Elyria. As we were talking yesterday, I asked Tom if I could bring this to you because I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page with what they're going forward promoting and what your expectations are and what the eventual contracts are that you'll be seeing. So naming rights in particular are really interesting and can get pretty complex. The company is essentially presenting different tiers to the various companies that they're visiting. So a company that may have a limited number of employees, a small company, would possibly not be on a tier that a large corporate type sponsor would be at. But that being said, the sponsorship opportunities are really kind of limitless out there right now, honestly. If it's out there, it has an opportunity to have a name associated with it or some kind of banner or something. The opportunities for display, signage is primarily what I wanted to ask you about tonight, because I think it's important to understand that right now we've seen renderings with, for example, the archways that lead into the stadium complex that are beautiful. They're the steel posts, steel archways. We've seen renderings where they say Ely Stadium. It's possible that that entranceway is interesting to somebody as a naming possibility. So it may not potentially say Ely Stadium in a particular place. It may have a name associated to that area. So I'm being obnoxious right now because I'm going to give you an example of what, with all these contracts, in the event that somebody does say they would like to have a naming right and they pay that kind of money for it, they are going to expect, and the contract would state, that we as a district go forth then in all communications and references to that space at the complex, use the appropriate name that they've paid for. So in an obnoxious example, I just want to show you how it could be, and I just want to make sure everybody's good with this. So, if we were to release something inviting people to come to an event, fans are encouraged to meet at the Mike Gebhardt concession stand just inside the Greg Ellick entrance located near the Jim Bax Plaza, bordering the Annie Karstafen Field of Ely Stadium within the Kevin Brubaker Multi-Sport Complex. So, I just want to make you aware that those possibilities exist for all of these various components of the overall complex to possibly hold a name, possibly hold some kind of display with names. So just going forward, I just wanted to make sure everybody is good with that. The company does understand that the Ely Stadium name remains, but within that, there are layers that are possible with all of these various aspects of that large complex.
According to the contract, to remember, everything is going to be brought before the
Yes.
board, and you are going to have a say on what takes place or what does not take place. Now, what we need to talk about as well, along with what Amy is saying, is how do we want to proceed with that? Because we can't come together every time somebody gives us a sponsorship to look at. Is there maybe a way that we could act as a board to have Kevin, being the president of the board, look at the material, give his approval, or speak with several board members and then give his approval? Would that be okay, Howard, for something like that?
What kind of dollar amounts are we talking?
Big dollar amounts.
Well,
Some of them maybe not.
they're tiered, so
Yes.
it would, for instance, Howard, I think the scoreboard, for instance, has multiple display possibilities. There's the digital video component, but there are also the static sideboards and bottom boards of the scoreboard. For instance, the sideboards could be purchased for $10,000 per spot with a contract of 5 years. $10,000 per year, say. The bottom ones could be a lesser amount for a 5-year term, or whatever that may be. So in that case, that's actually probably, a lower tier purchase. Something like an entranceway, for instance, could go as high as $300,000.
Well, I suppose my first take is I'd rather have the board approve everything, but I understand that there are some smaller amounts and smaller sponsorships that might be more appropriate to designate the superintendent to make that decision. So what the board might want to consider is giving him the authority to act on certain proposed sponsorships up to a certain dollar amount, the lower amounts.
Great.
Keeping absolute board authority on higher tiers. You want to split it up that way.
Well, wouldn't the smaller amounts, like the 6 and the 10,000, you wouldn't have a naming rights to anything in the facility, right?
Right?
You would just get a little
Yep.
piece of the score.
It'd be your logo,
Sure.
essentially.
But if you're gonna have something where, like the promenade, where it's gonna be Favre Keys Walker
Sure.
Promenade, and they're donating $100,000 a year for 10 years, that I think should come to the board.
Absolutely.
Yes.
What are the tiers set at?
Well, I really can't tell you that right now because I don't have that menu of prices.
Well, I can tell you
But-
that the small businesses, we've received the emails for a small business, it's 6 to 10,000, 6 or 10,000 a year
Yeah.
for what's considered a small business.
And that,
Or I think a 5-year commitment. it
yes,
was.
5-year commitment. And that, their goal is to get, in a lot of these larger tier purchases, their goal is to get as much upfront as possible within that term. But as Mr. Ehrlich stated, I think that there's been a tremendous amount of interest from the local companies on those types of tier sponsorships.
I know the company.
Seems to be going really well.
Speaking with him yesterday, it's going very well.
Mm-hmm.
And we spoke to Daktronics today, Amy and I did, with reference to the scoreboard and what's going to be on it. I know they would like to move at a pace once they sign an agreement with a company or a corporation or a business to make sure that it is up there in the beginning of the football season. So that's
Yeah.
why when we say there's not a rush, but a rush, it's not like we have 6 months before the first game. We're talking 2 months. And it's going to take time to get the placard or whatever, the banner or whatever it is made.
Yeah, yeah.
What's the board's thought on a dollar amount to allow the superintendent to approve up to without coming to us, or is there a phase or a tier?
Well, my thought on that would be that if the smaller amounts are just going to be part of the scoreboard and in the program, have at it. But if it's going to change the overall structure of the facility, and a significant part of the facility is going to change in appearance and name.
Right.
I
agree.
And I would assume that's going to be a large dollar amount,
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
50, 100, 1,000 up.
Oh, absolutely.
I would say that should come in front of the
50?
board.
50 or more?
Well, if it has naming rights.
Yeah, again, if
If
it has.
it has naming rights.
Maybe
Sure,
that's-
that'd be a tier 1 purchase at that point. Mm-hmm.
If it's just stadium
Advertisement.
advertising, I don't see the need for that to come.
And the only other thing that I would bring to the board with specific items that would fall under my realm, if I felt that, depending on the company who wanted a sponsorship, I would bring it to the board to ask for certain permission, depending on who or what the organization is.
We don't want to see Bugsies or somebody like
Yes.
that, obviously, sponsor.
And that's, yes.
So if we went with naming rights and above, we'd have to come back to the board. We'd be okay with that, Howard?
Yeah, any contract involving naming rights or advertising over a certain dollar threshold, just make a motion that requires board approval. Anything below that, you're delegating the superintendent the right to enter into those contracts.
But you're saying it should be a certain dollar amount?
Dollar specific.
What would you say for that, Howard? 50,000?
I was thinking 25.
25?
And there is, we talked to them yesterday, they are preparing a template, so to speak, of a contract that would be approved by Howard before they take it to the client. Their goal would be to have it signed at that meeting and then brought back to us to then agree whether or not that's a contract that we would accept.
How has the significant dollar naming rights been going? Have they made
They're-
any comments on that?
Yes, they actually did yesterday, that there is something that they're on the cusp of.
I left the
so,
meeting feeling extremely excited.
Great.
Not specifics or anything.
no
but-
specifics, but, yeah.
But the interest in our stadium is extremely,
Mm-hmm.
extremely high out there amongst all the ranks.
And it's not necessarily where you would generally go with your thoughts in terms of mostly local. In actuality, there's a lot of competition for these things from some of the large players in healthcare, colleges, all kinds of things, places that are looking for recruitment opportunities, sales of outside markets. It's actually a very competitive market. And some of these places that already have stadiums up and running, that have sponsorships that you see when you go there, part of their agreement sometimes is essentially to limit who else can come in. So that's why some of these people who aren't showing up in these other stadiums are looking for places to go.
Gotcha.
So it's pretty interesting stuff.
Cleveland Clinic gives you $1 million, you're not gonna let you have Mercy or UH Hospital up there too.
Right.
Any other questions or discussions?
That's great.
If none, then based on Mr. Lane's thought process, I'll entertain a motion to allow the superintendent, or let's put it this way, a motion to anything over $50,000 on, or $25,000 on advertisement, and any naming rights would come before the Board of Education. Anything below that $25,000 threshold for advertisement, the superintendent would have the authority to approve on behalf of the board.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Karstoffen. Any other discussion? Madam Treasurer?
Mr. Elick?
Aye.
Ms. Karstafen?
Aye.
Mr. Bax?
Yes.
Mr. Gebhardt?
Aye.
And Mr. Brubaker?
Aye, motion carried. Thank you, Amy. Appreciate that update, Dr. Jama. Anything else, Dr. Jama?
Nope, that's it, Mr. President.
Okay. Board of Education, any information from any board members?
No, sir.
The next item will be, I need a motion and a second for the Board of Education of the City of Elyria School District, County of Lorraine, State of Ohio, that the order of the superintendent to expel is either upheld or overturned. I don't have a name here, Madam Treasurer, so I don't know if that's supposed to be that way, or...
I wanted to make sure
Yeah,
that,
I actually have resolutions for that.
Okay?
I don't know if the board wants to go into executive session and discuss that at all.
I think we probably should.
Okay.
I know nothing about it.
Neither do
Okay.
I.
Then we will, I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss
Matters protected and kept confidential by FERPA.
that.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Bax, second. Second by Mr. Gebhardt. Any discussion? Madam Treasurer?
Mr. Bax?
Yes.
Mr. Gebhardt?
Aye.
Ms. Karstafen?
Aye.
Mr. Elick?
Aye.
And Mr. Brubaker?
Aye, motion carried. We'll proceed into executive session.